Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Unorthodox Vegan. My name is Sean Gold and today we are going to make boba, also known as bubble tea. And you've got a first. I said I've never made it before from scratch, so I'm going to be trying to do that today. We're making it and seeing how to make that work. I have all my ingredients that I need at hand, but I also have a backup in case of an emergency. So you can buy boba, the bubble tea itself. You can buy the actual pearls, the tapioca pearls, in bulk at Asian markets. So I have the brown sugar ones, which we'll be making today as a backup. Hopefully I won't need to use those. And I also have these instant ones that, or they're not quite instant, but there's packages of ones that are ready in about 3 minutes. They're a lot faster to make. Normally, once you got the bubble tea, if you're using these already pre-made or the ones that we're going to make today, the boba pearls, the tapioca pearls, it takes about an hour of cooking time. Most of that is letting the tapioca just cook for about 25 minutes till it softens up and turns all the gelatinous aspect of it comes out, and it forms that nice little perfect ball. And then another 25 minutes for it to slowly cool down, which is also still part of the cooking process. So we're going to be, those are ways to, this is a way to speed it up using this type of packaging and this type of material. I've tried it, it's okay. These are much better, but what I'm going to do today is we're going to make our own. The ingredients are fairly straightforward and simple. A little bit of water, brown sugar, tapioca powder, or tapioca flour. It's also the tapioca starch, same thing. And if there's other ingredients you want to put in, that's up to you. Now you can use white sugar and you can use matcha, that Japanese tea, if you want to have green pearls. So if you use white sugar instead of using brown sugar and use matcha, it gives you you can have a nice green colored pearl. If you want just regular brown pearls, then you use brown sugar, dark brown sugar. I'm going to try to make the black pearls, which is a much darker one. And it's I don't know how much darker it's going to be, but we'll see how it turns out. It suggests using cocoa. Now, I found this recipe online. It is from the Flavor Blender, and it's called the Brown Sugar Boba Pearls. So we'll see how this all works out today for a recipe. But those are the ingredients. Water, sugar, we'll make that into we'll boil that up and get that start to happen. Add in some tapioca powder, the starch with some the cocoa to give it get that going, get that dark color. And then we'll start to add in some more, make some dough, roll it out, cut it up, roll it into tiny little balls, hopefully about the same size as this, if we get that right. And then letting those dry. And then once those are set and everything is ready to go, then we'll put them in a pot, boil them up, and make that bubble tea. First step is to add the water to a small saucepan, and that amount of water is 60 grams of water. And I did this by weight measurement because that's what the recipe had in it online, and then add in the 50 grams of the dark brown sugar. Now, that's usually it's supposed to be about a quarter of a cup each for those two things. So I'm going to mix those two together in this little saucepan, and then that's going to go on the stove at a medium heat. Get that to start to boil. And while we're doing that, we're going to be mixing up the boba. So I have brought over the tapioca, which is about 95 grams, because I'm supposed to have 100 grams in total of to make up the boba pearls themselves, and I have 5 grams of cocoa. Again, this is intending to darken it up a little bit. So I'm just going to mix this up right now just to get that mixed through so we get a nice little color happening. Unfortunately, I did not have the audio turned on. Not sure what happened there while I was doing this section of the video. What I was doing here is I was boiling the brown sugar and water, getting it into a nice thick syrup. And then I added in about 3 to 4 tablespoons of tapioca powder, the tapioca cocoa mix. Stirred that around fairly quickly, took it off the heat because it was setting up very quickly and I wanted to be able to manage it, didn't want it to burn, and got that happening. And then added in, once I got that nicely going and mixed in properly, then I added in the rest of the tapioca cocoa mix, and then stirred that around and made it into a dough, got that happening, took it off the heat, and that's where we're at. Okay, we've moved over to the counter here. It took me a minute to do that, so I haven't got this all completely mixed in. I'm going to take as much of this out as possible and pull it all together using brute force, kneading it. And that's what we're going to be doing, is kneading this dough. And hopefully I'm not going to burn myself. Okay, get that out there. Oh, it's nice and warm. It's not too hot. Well, as you could probably tell, it was a little bit too dry. So I ended up adding about a tablespoon of water. And I have done that and made it a lot easier to work with. So that's what you can see this. It's nice and it's a little bit tacky, which is the right texture. And I'm just blending in to get that nice, as much as an even look and color as I can. And if you need to add a little bit more tapioca powder or the starch, then feel free to do that. I'm just going to knead this all together. I may have put in just a tad too much water, but I'm feeling much better about it than what I was a minute ago. Okay, that dough is looking pretty good. Took a little bit of kneading, but it's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to put in just a little bit of tapioca flour on this cutting board, just so that don't have it sticking to it. And now we're going to roll it out using a rolling pin and try to get this to a somewhat even thickness of about, it's suggesting 1/4 of an inch. So we'll see how well that works. And then we're going to score it so we get it to the right size. We want to make sure that these boba pearls are the right size. We don't want them too big. Definitely don't want them too small. So it said 1/4 of an inch thick, but I can't quite imagine that being quite right. So I'm going to go a little thinner than that. It's suggesting cutting them up into 1 centimeter squares, but I don't have a 1 centimeter grid and to mark it with. And it was the suggestion was to use a cooling tray like this and to use that to score it, just to mark it. So I'm going to try to do that and see how that works. Those are bigger than 1/4 inch. That's why I'm trying to go with a slightly thinner structure. We'll see how this works for us. Now I got some marking in there. I'll move this out of the way. And we're going to, I did 2 lines there. Okay, we're going to cut these along those lines. I have put some tapioca powder into a bowl, and I'm going to use that to hold these guys, to keep the balls as they go in there. And I'm just going to make sure that they're all about the same size. Just put them in there so that they get dusted with the tapioca, so they don't, stick together with each other. Okay. I want to get these about the same size as those ones over there. So let's make sure that they get in there. Now, the 2 things here that I read about. One of them is, feel free to add a little bit of water to your fingers if they don't form properly. If they find that they're too dry. So that's one thing to do. And otherwise, we're just doing this. This is a time-consuming process. So I'm not going to bore you with it. I'm just going to make up these balls. And there we have it. I have rolled all of that bubble tea balls, or the tapioca and brown sugar, dark brown sugar, and cocoa into little balls. And then I swirled this around. This was in a bowl, as I said earlier, with tapioca powder in it. This is to keep them from sticking together. So I just wanted to show you that's what I was doing. And the next step is to put them out onto a cookie tray or a baking sheet, whatever you want to call it. and have them dry. Now, for long-term storage, so if you're going to not use them right away, the suggestion is to have them out there for 4 hours, dry for 4 hours, rotating occasionally as you do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to capture some of that tapioca powder. I don't want to dump it all out into there. Just going to just put it into here. We'll sift it through. Get those balls, those tapioca balls, pearls, as they're called. Let that sift through. And that one just went away. All right. Get all that excess off of there. And this is what you should be doing, by the way, before you make bubble tea, even with using the packaged bubble tea mix or the tapioca pearls, is that they recommend that you just put them in a little I don't know, sifter or whatever this thing is called, and just get the excess powder off of them, because it's just going to make a bit of a mess. It's not like it destroys it. It's a bit of a challenge for it later. So these are out there. Some of them are big. I recognize that. We'll see if it'll fit through the bubble tea straw. I'm going to let those sit on this cookie sheet and dry for a while. Now I'm only going to let them dry for an hour for the ones I'm going to make for the bubble tea today. And then the other ones, I'm just going to have them sit and dry for about 4 hours. Recommend that you give them a little roll around just to keep them from getting a flat bottom. And that's what we're going to do for the next hour. Well, as you may have noticed, I have a few extra pearls, that is. What I ended up doing is I found that I looked at them and thought, some of them are just too big. So I decided to split them. And the way I did that was I just tore them in half and then pinched them back to a generally round shape, and then just rolled them around a little bit. That way they don't overlap and you don't get a break in them. So just to show you what I did, so take that one, just pinch it into two, pinch it into a round shape without overlapping any pieces so you don't have any cracks in it as such. And then give it a little roll to make it round, or mostly round. And then put it back in there. Again with this one, just sort of pinch it back into a round shape. And a little roll. And if it does get a little bit of a crack in it, just wetted my finger a little bit, just to make sure I hold it back together again. There, it's nicely done. And roll that into the tapioca powder that's already there, and we should be good to go. So I'm just letting this dry again, still. While the tapioca pearls are drying still, I decided to make some tea. And not just any tea. I use the Celestial Seasonings Bengal Spice, which is one of my favorite. So what I'm doing now is just letting it steep. I will be adding in some brown sugar after I take out the tea bags. And I'll be using that to put the tapioca pearls in after I have cooked them. Stay tuned. Well, I have boiled some water. I have some water boiling here, and I am going to put in about 1/4 of a cup of the boba pearls that we've made. It should have been making at least a cup of them, so I'm going to put in 1/4 of a cup. It's supposed to be, a cup should serve for about 6 drinks. And I figure that, 1/4 of a cup, that's probably, or it's almost 1/4 of a cup, that's probably enough for me. So I'm going to put that in right away into there and stir it around so it doesn't stick to the bottom. And what I'm going to do is wait for them to start to float to the surface. When they float to the surface, that's what I'm going to put the lid on and let them cook for about 30 minutes. It depends on how dry they are, will determine the length of time, but let's say 25 minutes. I might even do that because these aren't that dry. I just made them, so they should be able to survive very nicely, or should be able to cook very nicely. You just want to get them to an almost clear state. I'm going to cook them I'll probably put it on for, let's put it on for 25 minutes. And just want to get them floating before I put the lid on, because I want to make sure that they're not going to stick to the bottom. And I don't want them to stick to each other either, so I may open it up every once in a while just to make sure that they're not sticking. But you can see they are those nice little pearls in there, and I'm letting them cook. And they look like they're floating now, so I am going to put the lid on, let that go for that 25 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, the tapioca has been boiling for, the alarm is just about to go off, for 25 minutes, and it looks pretty good. Those little pearls look pretty good. I'm going to turn the heat off now and let it sit in this hot liquid for about 20 minutes. I'll put the timer on for 20 minutes for that. Just to point out, one of the things I didn't mention was the amount of water to the pearl, to the tapioca pearl mix. When I read the instructions for the one that came in the bulk one, it said 10 to 1, 10 parts water to 1 part pearls, tapioca pearls. And it's because there's going to be a lot of absorption that's going on. It's going to get syrupy and thick and stuff like that. This recipe said 4 or 5 to 1. So I just put a bunch of water in the pot, and it was like at least a liter of water and the half cup of or quarter cup of pearls. So I think that I had enough water in there. The thing is, it's going to get thick and syrupy, and you're going to get rid of all that stuff you don't need in the process. But right now, it's going to let this thing continue to cook without the heat on it, just with the absorbing the water that's in there. We wanted to get it as translucent as possible, but we also want those to be dark. So this is they had swollen up. I don't know if you could notice that, but they had really swollen up nicely, and they're nice and big here. But what's going to happen is that they're going to, as it cools down, it's going to get a lot smaller. Be back in a few minutes. The time is up. I have had these things sitting in this hot water, and the boba pearls are in there. Hopefully you can see them in there. What I'm going to do now is transfer them using a slotted spoon to get rid of that excess liquid, and putting them into a bowl of cold water. This is to get them to, what's the term? Stabilize, normalize, whatever they have to do. Let's make sure we get all of those bubbles, all of those pearls. Now I didn't do, as you know, I didn't cook all of the pearls. I only cooked about a quarter cup. I think I've got them all. All right, got them all. And they're sitting in there, and I'm just going to let those cool down. And then we're going to be using that to make our bubble tea very shortly. We have the tapioca pearls in the cold water. I have my tea that I've made earlier. This is the Celestial Seasoning Bengal spice, which I had heated up with some brown sugar to make it nice and syrupy and give it a nice, really thick, sweet flavor. I'm going to put the boba pearls into that tea. Into a glass. Try to use a clear glass. That way you get the value of seeing it, because hopefully we'll be able to see them in a minute when I put in the milk. And I think there's one more in there. There we go. All right, not that. I mentioned I'm using a vanilla flavored oat milk. And I'm going to let that just go in there and give that a little bit of a mix. That is sweet and delicious. Now the boba straw. Now hopefully you can see that this is a proper boba drink, in that we have those pearls in the bottom. Mixing them up so you get the proper action. We got a beautiful mocha color there. Those pearls are pretty darn dark. They did turn out really well. And let's try it and see if we can get it through the straw and how that works. Oh, they're beautiful. They are chewy. I love that flavor. Oh, that texture. Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely delicious. There are so many different ways you can make bubble tea when it comes to the actual tea portion of it, the drink. But this is delicious. Oh, the calories in this thing, can't believe it, but it's great. It took a lot of work to make those tapioca pearls. There's a lot of ways of doing it less without having to do all that effort, but this is pretty darn good. And it's pretty satisfying to know that you can actually make them yourself. You don't have to go and buy the pearls. And especially if you can't find them, if you don't have a market that gets it, then just buying the tapioca starch is all you need to do. The tapioca flour, sometimes called, and then make whatever you want to do: chocolate, fruit, whatever flavors you want. My grandkids like playing around with it as well and doing variations. But this is the first time I've done them from scratch, so this has been an experience for me. Thank you for attending the episode 14 of the Unorthodox Vegan on how to make bubble tea, boba. If you want to get a hold of me, my email address is up here somewhere. You can reach me at vrcompanions@gmail.com. And if you would like to follow me further and see all of the episodes, you can go and see them on YouTube. My YouTube channel is The Unorthodox Vegan. The Unorthodox Vegan. For now, my name is Sean Gold. Have a great day.